Zak Brown has just made his third move from Red Bull in 3 years, and while the rest of the paddock is still debating what it means for GP and Andrea Stella, almost nobody is asking the more important question: who actually built McLaren? It's Monday the 13th of April. You're watching Coffee Corner Motorsport Espresso News. All in news delivered in around 10 minutes. So let's get into it. Let's start, of course, with the current constructor champions McLaren, who of course announced that big move of Jean-Pierre Lambiase joining McLaren from Red Bull last week. That part of the move has been well documented, but what you might be missing is a specific detail in the announcement that tells you everything about the state of McLaren right now. Now, McLaren's statement, as we talked about, confirmed that GP will be joining as Chief Racing Officer. Reported into current team principal Andrea Stella, reported into is the key line in that statement: not replacing, not succeeding. And in the team that chooses every single word in a public statement deliberately, that phrasing is not an accident. The role exists because Andrea Stella currently carries two jobs: team principal responsibilities stacked on top of chief racing officer responsibilities. GP will take the racing operation off Andrea Stella while he can focus on being a team principal. Now, there are, of course, two versions of that Stella to Ferrari story that's circulating the paddock right now. Jackie Martin said on the Paddock Access podcast that Andrea Stella has already signed a pre-contract with Ferrari. The Telegraph has reported that McLaren are preparing for his departure, but on the other side of the coin, Bianca Gala for Auto, Motor and Sport has reported that people close to Andrea Stella do not expect him to pursue a Ferrari team principal role, and Italian media have also dismissed the whole story as just wild speculation as well. So that's where we currently are with this story. Not a confirmation, not a denial, but a live, unresolved situation with credible voices on both sides telling us all a different version of what's going to happen. But here's the part that matters the most in all of this, and that is, of course, Zak Brown. Now, I published my analysis on coffeecornermotorsport.com yesterday, making the case that Zak Brown is the architect that nobody talks about. Yes, he's loud. Yes, he's American. Yes, he likes to race cars for just fun. And in a pattern that rewards quiet technical authority, that personality just gets read as a commercial frontman. But he is much more than that. In 2019, according to Sportsco, McLaren posted a $137 million operating loss on a revenue of $166 million. Just let that set in for a minute. $137 million loss. That same team is now valued at $4.73 billion. MasterCard signed as a naming rights partner for this season, as we know, in a deal that's reported to be worth around $100 million a year. 53 commercial partners, and probably a couple more by the time I finish filming this video, with Forbes now estimating 70 to 75% of McLaren's revenue now comes from their commercial operations, the very thing that Zak Brown has overseen. And of course, he keeps raiding Red Bull. Rob Marshall came to McLaren, Will Courtney came to McLaren, GP is now coming to McLaren. Three of the most respected names within the paddock, all to the same team inside 3 years. Zak Brown identified that gap in each case, and he moved before anyone else had even framed the question. The GP signing future-proofs McLaren against every single outcome that could possibly happen. Should Andrea Stella stay, then the load is naturally lighter and much better with him on board. Should he decide that Ferrari is right for him and the opportunity comes knocking, the replacement is already there, ready to go. It sends a message both internally and externally that no individual is bigger than the structure that Zak Brown has now built. That's not a small thing to say when you've just won back-to-back constructor championships. Meanwhile, the 2026 regulation debate grows on, and it's drawing in voices from outside the current paddock, and a former driver has a very specific take on what these cars are doing to what he calls the fastest men on the Formula One grid. John Alesi has waded into this ever-growing 2026 regulation debate, and he's got a particular take on Max Verstappen's situation that's worth listening to. Now, Racing 365 have got the report on this one. They are saying that John Alesi believes the fastest drivers, and in this drivers he specifically names Max Verstappen are being held back by the battery management demands of the new cars. The 2026 power units, as we know, now run a 50-50 split all year on between internal combustion and electrical power. Battery harvesting is not a feature of the racing, it is the racing at the moment. Drivers are lifting and coasting to recharge, they're going down to first gear through corners to spin the turbo, and in qualifying over a single lap, they are still having to manage energy. Now, Verstappen has described these as cars as Mario Karts, as we've heard with Mushroom Beast. John Alesi's position is that this criticism is not a problem for Red Bull, it's actually value. Speaking to the press, John Alesi said he is absolutely pushing the team, but it doesn't mean that you're against the team. His argument is quite straightforward as a pure driver. Now, Max Verstappen, as we know, wants to go flat out. These regulations do not allow it. The maximum he could do right now, in Alesi's words, is stay quiet and let the engineers actually make the improvements. Red Bull, as we know, are sitting in the midfield. Verstappen's best result so far this season is around a P6. Mercedes have won all 3 races, and the engineering problem is, of course, real. The frustration that Max is feeling is real. And according to John Alesi, the people who are reading Verstappen's comments as burning bridges and criticising his own team are completely misreading the situation entirely. However, it's not surprising, though, that Toto Wolff disagrees with that whole argument, and he's coming armed with numbers to back up his position. And in his eyes, it's a big one. Toto Wolff has delivered his verdict on the regulations debate, and as you can imagine, he's not very sympathetic to all of those critics who've been hitting out. Racing News 365 reports that, speaking to Austrian outlet OE24, Wolff claimed that over 90% of fans find the current racing entertaining and exciting. His framing is, not everyone's complaining, but some drivers are having problems with the complex electronic management. He added, in sports, you always have to evolve, and you should respect both sides. The opinions of the traditionalists who want the sport to stay exactly the same as how it used to be, and those of the new fans who say we actually like it, and that's the way it's going to be from now on. The context of this, of course, matters. Mercedes have won all 3 races this season. Russell won Australia, and Teddy won China and Japan, and currently they lead both championships. When you're winning every single race, defending the regulations is not a difficult position to hold. And Toto Wolff acknowledged both sides of the fan conversation, but the direction is clear from him. The data, in his view, supports staying the course. Verstappen called the cars anti-racing. Alesi says the fastest driver is being held back. Toto Wolff is now saying that 90% of the audience actually completely disagrees with that read. The argument is not going away. The FIA are already in meetings. Something will change. The question is how much and how fast. It's also worth remembering that famous Netflix scene in the last era where Toto was, of course, told to change his fucking car. And as the phrase goes, you reap what you sow, because right now it's the rest of the grid who need to take that advice and change their car to catch the silver arrows. Away from the regulations battle, and there is a longer term story building in the American side of the Formula One paddock. And this week that timeline just got a little bit more concrete, and if I'm honest, a little bit more exciting. Cadillac Formula One CEO Dan Towriss has confirmed that the General Motors power unit is not only on schedule for 2029, it's actually ahead of schedule according to him. Now, Planet F1 reports that Dan Towriss was speaking to media when he was asked about the timeline for their own engine supply, and his position was crystal clear. Right now, the focus is bringing their own GM Motors engine for 2029. If there are ways to speed it up, they will. The team, as we know, currently runs the Ferrari customer power unit, with the intellectual property kept completely separate. Ferrari supplies the engine, and the GM Performance Power Units division that's based in Concord, North Carolina, develops their own. Those are going to be completely separate projects. In Dan Towriss' words, and the GM side will be GM's work completely. He was asked directly whether spending hundreds of millions of dollars on an engine that might only run for 2 years before regulation change makes sense after all. Now, the common sense answer would be, of course, just extend the Ferrari supply and then come clean into the new regulations with a brand new power unit. But his answer to that question was that getting the Cadillac power unit on the Formula One grid as soon as possible is their priority. Regulation timeline or not, Cadillac want to become a full-blown works power within Formula One. Cadillac, of course, sit P10 in the Constructors' Championship, headed into their first home race in Miami, yet to score points. The race team is now there. The reliability, that's largely held, especially in the last 2 rounds, which is a big plus for a first-year outfit. They've got developments on the way. They are now ready to make a move and kick on. The engine facility targets completion in early 27, and 2028 2029 is 3 seasons away, which for a team that only just joined the Formula 1 grid in 2026, that's not just a timeline, that's a massive statement of intent. And finally, a story that sits just a little outside the championship fight, but a young driver with one of the most ambitious racing bucket lists in the sport, and a Mercedes connection that could well help him complete that bucket list. Joshua Dürksen is, of course, 22. He's from Paraguay, and he's currently racing for Invicta in F2. He won the opening sprint race of the 2026 season in Australia last month, and a couple of weeks ago, he also completed a Formula E rookie test for Citroën in Madrid. At the start of this year, he also joined the Mercedes development program and is set to take part in TPC tests with the Silver Arrows, which would mark his first time inside an actual Formula 1 car. Now, Racing 365 are reporting that after speaking to TalkSport, Dürksen explained exactly what dream he is chasing. My target in life is to compete in all categories. I really love experiencing new things, new teams, new cars, new ways of driving, and new tracks. I just want to have the full experience of motorsport. So not just Formula 1 either. He listed F1, Formula E, IndyCar, WEC, GT racing, rallying, and the Dakar Rally. Every format, every discipline. He's now in his third year in F2, the window where careers either kick on or the path shifts onto something else. And the Mercedes backing he now enjoys matters more than most. Not every driver at this level is chasing one seat at the expense of everything else. Now, Joshua Dürksen sounds like someone who genuinely just wants to race absolutely everything, see everything, and build a career that covers the whole of the motorsport world, and is clearly open-minded and, some would say, realistic about what those options are. And in a paddock where tunnel vision is usually seen as a virtue, this is actually quite refreshing and, if I'm honest, quite good to see. He will, of course, be back on track in F2 in Miami after that announcement last week that Miami and Canada have been added to the Formula 1 calendar, with Bahrain and Saudi Arabia cancelled. So the longest break in Formula 1 history is still ongoing, with, of course, Miami, the next race, still feeling the world away. Mercedes go there having won everything in sight and nearly leads the championship. Verstappen is still fighting the cars, and to be honest, is hoping the FIA changes will help him in that fight. Toto Wolff says that 90% of the fans are happy, although we've not seen where he got that 90% figure from, and Zak Brown is already 3 moves ahead of the paddock that hasn't even finished reading the last move. That is your Espresso news for today. More details over on coffeecornermotorsport.com, and they're also linked in the description. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to be kept up to date with all of the latest from the world of motorsport. And I will, of course, be back tomorrow with another show. Have an amazing day. I will see you later.